Welcome to our podcast, This Life, the Chronicles of Autism Mums. I'm Alison and I'm joined each week by amazing women who happen to have children on the spectrum. We talk about navigating the ups and downs of parenting kids with autism and how that affected us and our lives as women, professionals and mothers. Strap in, grab some tissues. Sometimes you'll cry from empathy and others from laughter. Join us on our journey of This Life. Hi, and welcome to this episode of This Life podcast. And today I'm joined by Moira and Huma. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. And today we are going to be delving into the World Cup situation that we have here in Qatar. For any of you listeners that don't know, we actually reside in Qatar, and the World Cup celebrations are looming. The flags are up around the city, and the excitement and the tension of this competition is building. And we are very excited to be here and to witness such a thing in a small city that we live in. But along with that, we thought it'd be a great idea today to talk about the challenges that are faced by families like ours who have kids with autism, and how we feel about large events, whether or not that be sporting, music, or whatever that might be, crowded areas, and how that can affect family visits and family outings, and how we kind of navigate those. So for anybody who's listening, I'll just give a little bit of background because obviously this competition in particular, the World Cup is huge. And there's so much happening here, and so many celebrities coming, so many music events, so much happening that I think the majority of us would like to participate in some way, but for some of our children, just depending on their situation, they might find large events with many people too overwhelming. Perhaps the sound is too overwhelming. Perhaps the crowds are a little too much for them. And also, I think for us as parents and families going together, it's how we meet the needs of everybody in our family group, especially when we don't know necessarily what to expect in those kind of situations. So Qatar has put on some really, really great accessible facilities for our families. FIFA are telling us that it's going to be the most accessible World Cup yet, which we're really excited to see what's on offer. I know that there's going to be some sensory rooms in some of the stadiums, which is a first, and also that there are in some of the fan zones that are located around the city, that there are accessible areas in those fan zones, so that there's going to be some quiet time available, and really to try and make it as accessible and ability friendly as possible. So we'll just get started with, do you as families, do you choose to attend large events? Have you been to any kind of big concerts, or it could even be visiting a really busy museum on a weekend, if you're back home, or, sporting events. Do you choose to, if you saw Ed Sheeran advertised and you were like, oh, I'd love to go and see Ed Sheeran, would that be something that you would automatically be like, no, we can't do that as a family? Or would it be something that you would choose to do, or shy away from?
I think if it's something that we really want to see, we would definitely try and go. I think we would probably more likely go to events where it wasn't absolutely necessary to stay to the end.
Right.
We would go and get the atmosphere, we went to Formula One last year,
right,
for example.
Yeah.
And that's not really something, unless you're a diehard fan, that you need to stay right to the end. You go and you get a snapshot of an experience.
Right.
And that was fine, and everyone enjoyed it. But like an Ed Sheeran concert, of course, you'd want to stay to the end. So no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't take them, because they would moan.
Right.
Callum would moan. Orla would love to go to a concert.
Right. Okay. So do you think it's kind of more about the duration of these things? And
Yes.
How long?
Oh,
that
yeah.
they can
Definitely
go on
look into
for?
how long a show would be.
Right.
And
Okay.
we've always gone to shows. We've always gone to the theatre and events and taken both the children. When he was very young, Callum would probably spend a lot of time on the floor behind the seat,
Right.
occasionally popping his head up to see what was on the stage.
Right.
Why was it the sound that bothered him or the...
Yeah, well, I can remember one in particular. We went to see The Lion King, and I think he was equally fascinated and scared, maybe.
Right.
So he wanted to see it, but he didn't want to be.
Yeah. Because it's a big deal. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like on a big
Scale.
a big scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's dark, and if you go to a theatre that's absolutely packed as well, there's a lot of people. Because even for me, actually, in those situations, sometimes it feels quite claustrophobic.
Yeah.
I remember we went to see Mary Poppins in the summer when we were back at home, and we'd been to see Mary Poppins a couple of years back before COVID. And actually, speaking about COVID, that's actually quite a big thing as well, I think. And we've really lost like 2 years of kind of socialization and all of these big events with our kids. So it not only affects, our boys, but also it can affect other members of the family as well, because they're not necessarily used to being in those big kind of crowds anymore. So I think there's a lot of anxiety for everybody around these things now. Yeah. And I remember walking into this theatre in London, and it was rammed, and it was a matinee performance. So there were loads of school children there. And I was just looking around, I was like, oh, this is so full. And so we were just kind of getting settled and everything else. And I do not remember it being so quiet the last time we were there. When the show started, it just went kind of deathly quiet. And Noah knows...
Perfect opportunity for them to shout something.
And Noah knows all of the songs from Mary Poppins, absolutely loves it. And I was...
Who's singing?
Honestly, he was
clenching.
Singing, but I was clenching because he was singing, but everybody wasn't singing. Mm-hmm. So it was, very often
it was sweet.
Was he speed singing?
He was speed singing. Noah does have a habit of speed singing to everything. But also when other people pay to go and watch Mary Poppins,
you're always conscious
that they probably don't want to be serenaded by Noah and his rendition of, I don't know, Let's Go Fly a Kite, like really, really loudly.
Oh, that's sweet.
But the thing is, 2 years ago, he didn't do that. He would have just sat there quite nicely and, but also...
But he would if he could. But he's progressed so much that he can sing it now.
Well, he can, which is excellent. But I did not anticipate that. So I had him sat next to my eldest daughter, not me. And also he's quite animated as well. So as soon as a song finished or whatever, he would clap. But he doesn't just clap. He's like this. His like arms going everywhere. He's smacking my big daughter like on the side and his eye. And I'm thinking, the people behind, they're not going to be able to see. No. So I had to
The
move
actors
it.
were probably thinking he's the best
Honestly,
audience member we've ever had.
I was just, I was by the time the interval came, I was just like, had to have a word with him. I was like, no, I know you're really enjoying this, but let's
tone it down.
Just tone it down. But it was the clapping, and then as soon as you tell him to kind of clap, ninja voice and kind of clapping, slowly, it becomes even more. He's just very, very animated. And I don't think I would have been so stressed about it if it wasn't so busy, because we were literally like kind of sardines. We were all kind of just sat there. But also, I think it goes back to really caring what other people think, and also having to feel like we need to justify our children's actions and their behavior. And then it goes again back to, this whole situation that we have with acceptance and just thinking, really about more than just that enjoying the moment, more about what everybody else is thinking about my son doing that, which effectively, if I was somebody in the crowd. I wouldn't care if somebody was in front doing that. It wouldn't
Yeah.
bother me at all. But
Yeah.
I think it's that judgment, which is like a human nature.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you know what I would do? Probably would put Callum's sunflower lanyard on, just so that there was something visible if people went
He's got a
tutting.
lanyard.
I know. If someone was tutting and looking round, and they would clock it maybe and think, okay, I'll let him off.
We didn't have any tutting or anything. I think it was just my own fear
Yeah.
that he was going to ruin somebody else's experience,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But, you know, you don't really want to get smacked in the,
No.
in the side of the head by somebody clapping. So what about you, Huma? Do you or have you attended like kind of large events, queued in queues at museums or, you know, different things with your kids and felt comfortable about it? And what's your biggest kind of fear to choose if you do or you don't do something?
So yeah, we, initially, we would. So if it's outdoors, if it's open air, so I'm less stressed because I'm like, okay, this is open. There's no walls restricting. He's able to move around. That's fine. When he was little, as he's grown up, he's progressed. I remember the queuing part. I remember waiting in line at the fun areas in malls where you have to wait your turn to go on the bumping car, and I remember how difficult the waiting was for him. That no, I have to have my turn now, and to make him that no, it's not our turn. We have to wait. And then sometimes, if someone more privileged would cut across and take his turn, and it would be more frustrating. He's like, I've been waiting. Why did someone go ahead of me? So, just navigating all of that. So it was the constant stress that you carry. And then, and the Formula One thing, they also went to that. My boys did. I didn't go. So it was just my husband and the boys. And I remember because he loves cars and the sound doesn't bother him. He likes the loud sound.
I think it's interesting actually that for some kids that would be like a really, really big thing. You know, in any of these big arenas or any big events, it's whether or not I know that would not be a consideration for us. It wouldn't matter to us, and obviously for you as well. But there are so many children that really struggle with, those loud sounds and noises more so than a crowd, perhaps.
But I think there's a difference between knowing that the loud noise is coming from that show rather than people all around.
Yeah.
No, because I remember one time I took them to, they were doing some practice motorcycle racing. Yeah. And whenever the motorcycle would go, it was a really loud sound amplified by the stadium. And I remember it was too much for my younger son, but my eldest was more than happy with that sound. It was exciting for him. And same at the Formula One, he was really excited. And then,
do you think he enjoyed the sound? Do you think that kind of added to the experience for him?
He loves it. He loves that sound. He loves, so it doesn't bother him even when he's listening to something on his tablet and the sound quality is not good, which would like make my ears bleed, but he finds it like
quite soothing.
Yes. And I remember like my husband coming home and telling me that he had like altercation of sorts with another person over there because my son was, I think he was fidgeting in his chair, or he put his feet on the chair in front or something, and then that person was bothered and he went to complain or so I my husband was really upset that why are you making such a big deal over a child's just his just because he put his feet up. So that's the thing that most people don't realize, that so that thing that the need to let out that energy,
movement. And that's for any child actually, at any kind of large event, isn't it? That there is always going to be times when they need to fidget, they need to move around. It's actually still a very long time, especially within kind of intervals, when there's nothing happening. The cars have stopped, or they're starting a new race, or maybe a football game, or maybe if you're a music concert or whatever, and you're waiting for that kind of main thing to happen. Because let's not forget, in those environments, then very often it takes a good couple of hours to get in, get settled and everything else. So that anticipation is building. There's a lot of people around. It's trying to keep them kind of busy and occupied, but also, you know, having a really high level of understanding about what they might be experiencing, what they might be going through.
Yeah.
It's when you need to buy lots of popcorn.
Yeah.
There you go. Moira's solution.
That's
Get
the
a load of
answer.
popcorn. Take another mortgage out on popcorn.
Exactly.
Is he good with queues? I mean, waiting in queues or...
I mean, he can do it, but
Because if
we utilise the card whenever we can, and if he's stimming and waving his arms around, I don't stop it because sometimes it gets us fast-tracked.
Because in the World Cup, there might be long queues there, and you know, will the card... I mean, I don't have a card, but like, do you think it'll...
Oh, definitely
work?
get one. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about here is, you know, we're talking about the sunflower lanyards, which I know are internationally recognised now as, you know, identification of somebody with any sort of additional need, actually.
Hidden disabilities.
Yeah, and his disabilities. And also, we do have an accessible card here in Qatar, which we do, you know, we do use and we can use for certain situations, which is actually quite reassuring, to be honest, because at least you have some kind of level of backup. And as Moira said, I mean, we've actually both used that on numerous occasions, and it's really, really helpful, especially like in the airport queue and things like that, you know, and sometimes the queues are so long and, you know, you've got off of a long flight and it's really helpful to know that you've got that backup. Very often we don't use it, but we know, you know, that it's a security, you know, you feel like, well, at least I've got my card if things, you know, kind of get to a point, because you know, you never know. And I think it's the unpredictability of any child, but specifically our children as well, you know, lack of sleep, lack of food, waiting around, anticipation, anxiety, all of those things are super heightened in these kind of situations. So I do know that in a lot of the fan zones here, there's going to be accessible areas, which is pretty exciting. Yeah. So, you know, if you're going to go into those fan zones and experience all of the, you know, the activities and all of the entertainment that's been laid on at the same time, which sounds like it's going to be super fun, that there are quiet areas that you can go take the kids. And I think it's really important to be able to identify where they are. And it'll be quite interesting to find out more about that and how we get access to those things. So just going back to possible reasons, because we've the three of us that are here today, I know that, you know, we do try and attend as much as we can with our children, but I think for some parents it's just too hard. And that could be, and actually just to give some parents hope, if you've got younger children, then, you know, we're talking about kids that are in their kind of teens and tweens now. So it wouldn't necessarily be the same situation going back 5 or 6 years ago. So, you know, just talking for, you know, for the sake of people that have got kids that are younger and they don't necessarily feel that they could take their child to some of these events. What are the reasons why, you know, potentially, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, why you would not have taken Callum or Haider to certain events?
I don't think that we didn't take. I would always make sure that, for one thing, if it's a seated event in a theatre or something, I always choose seats at the end of a row.
Right. Okay, that's good advice.
So we've got easy access. If everything goes pear-shaped, we can just leave.
Okay. Quick exit.
Exactly.
Right.
If it's going to be especially noisy, I always have his headphones in my bag.
Right. So they're noise-cancelling headphones,
yes,
right?
Yes, noise-cancelling headphones. So I don't think that we would deliberately not go to something. Yeah. We would always try. I always want to expose them to different...
And also I think it's perhaps finding things that are of interest to them as well. You think that you might like,
of course.
Or maybe introduce them to it before. So, for example, let's go back to the Ed Sheeran concert. You know, if they do particularly like music, maybe expose them to Ed Sheeran and find out whether or not it's something that they like. You know, we could be talking about anything here. We could be talking about, you know, interactive museums. We could be talking about sport or whatever. Because I think very often, even if they don't necessarily particularly understand or appreciate the event that's happening. You know, sometimes that whole atmosphere can be really quite electric and really, really quite fun. So I think the reasons why somebody might not choose to go to these large events is, I think it's the anticipation for the parent more than anything.
Yes.
And the fear that,
as with everything, the anticipation is worse than
and not being able to plan
event.
because you don't really know what to expect yourself. So I think if your child is not good with change and also not good transitioning from one situation to another, whether or not it might be like a late night concert, there's still now no way that I would take my children to anything kind of like mid to late evening, because I think that for me personally, it just wouldn't work necessarily unless it was something massively engaging for them that they had a huge kind of,
it'd be kind of a waste of money.
Exactly, an interest in. But I think, you know, during the day, even like you say, it should be perhaps something that you can escape from easily if you need to. Maybe like noise cancelling headphones and things like that would also help as well. But I think that there are potentially kind of quite a lot of reasons why you would feel, you know, that a younger child wouldn't necessarily be able to attend for a particularly long time. What about you, Huma? Any reasons why, you know, Haider as his younger self would? Yeah. And actually, it's quite nice to talk about how far they've come in that time as well, and also to give reassurance to parents that things do change quite quickly. So, you know, if I think about where we were, you know, 5 or 6 years ago with Noah, and you know what we would have entertained doing with him, and now that you know, just with a few adjustments and things like that, and just kind of thinking, obviously we still plan and we still think things through, that, you know, there you know, would be a lot of things that potentially we wouldn't have done then, which we do now. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think that, you know, we haven't had a lot of stadium experiences, maybe once or twice, but stadium is, you know, open and big. And so there's this sense of that, you know, you're still in an open environment in which works all right. So, but there are sometimes you're in a situation where you are in a group of people, like, for example, a new house, or so I've had when he was
like
younger,
a housewarming or something like that.
Yeah, it's like a birthday. Like
Oh, right.
If I tried to take him to a birthday, he would cry till he would faint, and then I would just, you know, so he would just. It was so overwhelming for him that I'm not entering this apartment with full of these strange people. That's it. Yeah. And, you know, I've had, you know, pin drop silence and all the people staring at me while I'm struggling with this screaming child. Yeah. So I was thinking, like, even just like this small thing of taking a child to a birthday was it was like a huge deal for me, which if I was like, oh, I wish I could do that. Or just like in an unfamiliar place, like, for example, traveling in an airplane and, you know, there's like, you're in an enclosed space with a lot of people. That was a huge deal for him. And then, so, and then, you know, the crying fits and the vomiting. And so it was, and so, but the thing is that there are times when you have no choice. You have to take your child there, even when he's not ready for it, you know.
Do you think the exposure has helped him to overcome a lot of that anxiety and the, you know, the feelings that he had about that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because, you know, I've seen that if you don't expose the child, he will not get over that anxiety. I've had all 3 of my kids had some level of that anxiety where they would scream to the top of their lungs, where people would think that I'm kidnapping that certain child, that you're not the mother.
You're like, no, I'm trying to leave them here and I'll take them.
Literally, I had security guards following me. They're like, you know, observe this woman because this child is clearly not comfortable with her. So it's so embarrassing when I'm like, oh my God. So I was like, no, they have to get used to it. Otherwise, because I've seen that it's human nature. When I came to Qatar and I was, for 1 year, I was totally alone. You know, it's my default setting that if I don't have to meet anyone, I'll just be with myself. So I was 1 year, I was totally alone, and my husband said, oh, I'm going to invite my boss for dinner. And I remember sitting in the toilet and crying, and I was like, my husband's like, why are you crying? He said, what am I going to say to your boss? what am I going to talk to him about? Like, I was like, I had zero confidence. I did not even know how to make a conversation with an adult.
And this is because you'd literally stayed in with the kids for like a year.
It was just like me and my son.
Yeah, because
And-
you were too. You didn't feel you were ready to kind of expose you and him to environments.
I was thinking, even me, who had no problem meeting people, lost all. Like, I was anxious about meeting people. So I was thinking, we have to keep on pushing them to get out of their comfort zone, even if they don't like it. And I know, as you said, the biggest concern and biggest worry is that, people are looking. I hope no one says anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just very quickly before we wrap this episode up, what just can you share with, I mean, you've just basically given some really, really good advice there, which is, even if you are anxious and even if, you haven't, you don't know what to expect, exposure is, and I totally agree with you. And I think when you're in the moment, when you've got that younger child and, it just turns you white, just even thinking about, just color drains from you when you're feeling like, you need to kind of step over the line and push yourself and push them as well to a point to, expose them, because, it is going to help slowly. It's great advice. And I think, how would you go about, introducing kind of that exposure? Just before we wrap up, what would be your kind of top tips on, exposing your child with the experiences that you've had?
Well, I think we did the opposite, actually. I think we would be more comfortable with the things that we didn't do would be events with friends and lots of people that we knew.
Right.
We shied away from that, whereas we had no problems going to big events with people that we're never going to see again.
Right. Okay. Well, so it was, for you, it was more about taking that step to go to big events and exposing in that way, rather than have the added pressure of interactions with people that you knew and kind of feeling that you had to almost justify.
Which I regret now.
But I think it's a very fair point. And I think human nature states that you would do that. It's almost like two things to deal with, isn't it? It's like you're dealing, with that kind of new environment for both you and your child, but also, having to, and not saying that we should make it any excuses or apologies, but it is human nature. That's how we feel. So you're saying that but now you regret that, and you're...
we should have gone, and maybe it would have been horrific, but probably it would have been fine. Do you know?
Yeah.
But we will never know.
So try it, everybody, and see. Let Moira know how it goes for you.
I think the key is don't turn down any invitations.
Yeah.
If you're invited to something, just go and see.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Mum? Any words of wisdom, pearls for us?
Yes, I guess the same as Moira. Just see where you and your child is comfortable, and just it's okay to just try and experiment and try new places and new people. And what's the worst that can happen? I mean, my son will just say that this is boring and I don't like the food, and he'll just,
if that's cool, he can that's a win.
And I'll never come here again. So, so that's basically.
But at least we did it.
Yes.
Okay, great advice. Thank you, ladies. It's lovely to catch up with you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of This Life podcast, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining This Live podcast, brought to you by Learn Autism. To learn more about autism, check out their website at learnautism.com. You can download this podcast wherever you find your favourites, and if you prefer to watch us, all links are below in the description. See you next week, and thanks for listening.